Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek, the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 16, Chapter 3. And yes, as per usual, great set of chapters here. Unfortunately, nothing really crazy happening so far, but we're really kind of just building up into stuff. It's a lot of build up into the aerial stuff, which I'm assuming is probably going to be the next, 4 chapters or so. It's just kind of building slowly into that whole thing. I like there's a lot of stuff in here that's sort of confirming a lot of things that I've been suspicion. I like the fact there's a lot of stuff here that I've been kind of suspicious about for quite a while. Obviously, the elephant in the room, Luke, is finally addressed. I like this kind of stuff. I will have to say, I have to give the chat a big slap. I have to slap the chat. There's a thing that I've dealt with for quite a while going through this Mushoku Tensei series, and granted, the mods do a really great job of keeping me kind of protected from a lot of speculation, confirmation, denial of certain things. For those who don't know, if you're new here, I don't want confirmation on things. I love speculating on stuff and just watching people's reactions to me speculating on stuff. But there is one thing that I think sometimes gets through the moderators, and I think it's mainly because it's just not like it's necessarily saying one thing or another, but it feeds a lot into my mind. Is this idea that whenever I try to build something up, people downplay what I'm doing. A good example, a really good example was way long time ago. I got upset at Sylphie because she was not telling Rudius flat out, do not get involved with Ariel. Because obviously Sylphie knew that what Ariel was involved with is a conflict that is bloody. Now, I like the fact that Rudius himself, especially here lately, has sort of been seeing it differently, and I think for a much bigger problem in the idea that if he supports Ariel, he's putting a target on his back for anybody that is against Ariel or Asura if she becomes king. But the thing that a lot of people were saying back then is, you're assuming there's going to be a war. You're assuming there's going to be a battle. And I really don't like the fact that people were criticizing my criticism by knowing essentially how it's going to unfold. Their comments back here are essentially making me think, well, then there's not going to be a big battle or something like that. And I'm sort of having the same thing with Luke. Like I'm playing up Luke a lot, but there's a lot of people saying, well, no, you're thinking Luke is more than what he should be. Now, wait a second. From where I was back here, he can be something extremely dangerous. Now, what's to come, that's a different story. It could turn out that Luke is not even involved with the Man God in this timeline. Maybe what Rudius says here in a minute, maybe it's a case where maybe the future Rudius was just being paranoid. And it's not necessarily that Luke is working for the Man God, it's just future Rudius assumed Luke was working for the Man God because he told Ariel to go there, or at least he was part of why Ariel went to Asura when he did. So I guess it's a word of warning to people. Just go with it. Just because something's played up, just enjoy it. Most people that watch the content, they just kind of go with it. Like, whatever. He's going with these crazy theories. They enjoy it. If I'm completely off base, who cares? It's just more funny for people to see, wow, he's crazy. It doesn't need, just as much as I don't need a confirmation or a denial of a speculation, neither do I need you to correct my course. If I'm going to go down this rabbit hole, just let it happen. If it's too much for you, pause it, come back later, and skip forward. But anyways, it's a long tangent to say, let's get into this already. But yeah, as per usual, thanks to everybody for dropping by for the premiere. Thanks, chat, so much for dropping by. I hope you guys enjoy this Mushoku Mondays as per usual. I greatly appreciate everybody's support for checking out the videos coming on a weekly basis. Our viewership numbers have been excellent. It's been a lot of fun. It's been more exciting for me than I think anybody else. Additionally, greatly appreciate the support monetarily this last Mushoku Monday that we had. An amazing outpour. A lot of people kind of just wishing me a Christmas and all that kind of stuff. Merry Christmas to y'all. I hope you guys had a great one. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. Chapter 3, Opening Move. 2 days passed since Rudius summoned their guardian beast. He had his name engraved on his collar, and they built a large doghouse for him. When Rudius would wake up in the morning, he'd be waiting in the front entrance as Edis came out to train. He'd then stay there as a sentry until it was time to walk. Once home, he would come into the house and watch over everyone. Leo would periodically make his rounds of the house to ensure nothing was amiss. If there was something amiss, he would do his utmost to remedy it. Comfort Lucy, accompany Aisha shopping, or even walking Norn to school when asked. He was a home security system. Leo was incredibly intelligent, heeding what was told of him, and he was toilet trained. For tricks, he knew how to wait, sit, paw, beg, spin, and somersault. He was also submissive to the family. When Norn and Aisha nervously went to pet him, he'd wag his tail like a helicopter. He was particularly fond of Roxy and acted like a loyal knight around her. When Roxy woke up, he'd circle around her, wagging his tail, and try to shove his head between her legs. The first time, Rudius scolded Leo, saying that he was the only one that could lick her there. He acted like he gave up, but was back at it the next day. animals and their short attention span. Or it's like a, yes, sir, and then like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Roxy normally commuted to work on Dillo's back, but Rudius noticed Leo was barking at him, as if telling him something. While Rudius didn't know what he said, or if Dillo heeded those words, the armadillo seemed to flinch nervously away from Leo. It's like one of those things of like, is it like a jealousy thing, or is it one of those things of like, I don't trust you to protect her the way that I could? That's why he said they should have just summoned a whole bunch of sacred beasts. See if they can possibly duplicate the sacred beast. That's a thing. I think Rudy should figure out how to duplicate the sacred beast. The way that Leo hovered over the bottom of the stairs as Roxy climbed them seemed overprotective, but it made Rudius feel like a pathetic husband for not fussing as much. Why Roxy and Roxy alone? I wonder, Rudius. Rudius guessed it was because, as a dog, he could sniff out which of the family members was most impressive. Lenny and Priscilla seemed to have the same ability. I thought about this the moment I read it. The moment I read this line, it was like, it dawned on me like, that's technically right. Because that was like a thing that I got into way back there when Roxy first joined the family. They had this whole scene where they were going to school, and Lenny and Priscilla was at the front gates, and they were making comments about Rudius and Roxy and Sylphie. And they almost acted like they were making fun of Sylphie. And it was kind of funny because at the time I was trying to figure out, why do they show so much respect to Roxy but not Sylphie? If they show respect to Master's wife, why would they not show that respect to Sylphie? And yeah, technically right here, Rudius is sort of connecting this to that. Like, maybe it's because Lenny and Priscilla, as beast folk, they have that same sense of what is impressive, just like, you know, the Sacred Beast sees Roxy as impressive. And so thus, they're treating him that way. And yes, I've got into it in the last Mushoku Monday. My theories is that Roxy herself is carrying the hero that the Sacred Beast is supposed to follow. And I think what Ghislaine says in a minute here, it sort of makes sense as well. But Ghislaine more puts it in the idea that, well, because you were able to summon it, thus that means that it's going to be okay. It came to you on its own volition. Which, yes, technically makes sense to the summon. When he summoned Armamfi, it was tugged because it had a contract already there, and he was having to break that contract and drag him over. Where, yes, technically when he summoned the Sacred Beast, it was sort of implying this idea that it was wanting to come to Rudius. Like, it was calling out to Rudius. Come, like, reach your hand out, bring me in there. So it's a much different case there. When it came to Eris, Leo seemed off-put by her. Eris, on the other hand, adored animals. She loved nothing more than bury her face in the soft fur and give them a squeeze. Maybe she had cornered him at some point and done just that. Being the Mad Sword King, her power was no joke. Maybe his life flashed before his eyes, being crushed by that strength. Rudius had experienced that himself. Now, Rudius didn't mind being hugged like that, but it was understandable that Leo might not. Leo only approached her when it was time for a walk. It probably had something to do with her stamina. He suspected Leo was circling the entire city on his outings. To accomplish that took an incredible amount of speed that only Eris could match. That's probably why he chose Eris to be his partner, or maybe he considered her like a fellow security guard. It's like, we're both protecting the house, we gotta have a good relationship. Leo made a 2-kilometer radius around the house as his territory, not letting a single stray cat enter. Or mouse, please. Don't let the mice in there. That gave Rudius peace of mind that he was fulfilling his role as a guardian. The only problem that remained, of course, was the fact that he was a protector god of the Beastfolk tribe. When Ghislaine came to check on Eris, she was gobsmacked to find Leo. I can't understand him when he speaks, but it seemed to me that he came here on his own volition, in which case, the Dolia tribe should not have any complaints. So that meant that it would be fine, and it was time to move on to the next step of his plans. Now that's an interesting comment, because she's saying, okay, I don't know what he's saying, but he had to have come here on his own volition. Like, she doesn't understand him, but she seems to get an indication from him that he's here because he wants to be here. Now, granted, the response to that is, well, technically the circle is putting that upon them, but it's kind of similar to Armamfi. Armamfi has to obey his command, but it doesn't have to be like he likes that he's there. It's just their decision-making has to go by what they say by the circle, by their commandments. So maybe she sees the Sacred Beast is there and likes to be there. But at the same time, I guess that makes sense. Like, the Dolia tribe can't say anything, but they've been telling the Sacred Beast to stay in a certain spot in the village. It's not as if they weren't going by whatever its wishes were. But anyways, so that meant that it'd be fine, and they could move on to the next step of the plan. And just on time, Luke showed up to their house as Rudius returned from an errand. Here we go. Here we go. Suspicious Luke. Sus Luke. Rudius hid in the shadows the moment that he seen him at the gate. He remembered Orsted telling him that the man god was able to manipulate people, and the diary mentioned Luke being used by the man god to take down Sylphie. His future self was admittedly a bit paranoid, so his word might not be reliable. I didn't really think about that, and I guess that's technically true. I've been pretty heavy on the idea that Luke is obviously being used here, and I can't wait till it gets to the point where it kind of confirms one way or the other. But yeah, there's two sides of this. One is that, yes, technically, the future Rudius himself, because I don't think it was even in the diary, future Rudius himself said that, yes, Luke was used by the man god. He was one of the man god's apostles. He was used to lead them over there. Now, yes, that could be a case where he is essentially being paranoid, because he was doing that with Edis. Edis has to be working for the man god. Has to be. She keeps getting in my way. Anybody that gets in my way is obviously being used by the man god. He was super paranoid about that kind of stuff. So yes, I do agree with that. I just think too much stuff adds up. Now, that could be an amazing misdirection by Refugin in the idea of making me believe that all this stuff is being caused by him. The rat thing. I'm convinced, and I'm still convinced, that Luke had something to do with the rat. Possibly could have got that rat in his bag. Now, yes, I want to believe Sylphie and her trusting of Luke, but if things were that simple, that somebody trusts somebody and thus it always has to be true, it wouldn't be that interesting. It's much more interesting the idea that Sylphie could be deceived by Luke, who's being deceived by the man god. And as they kind of mentioned before, the man god has presumably a way to make people indefinitely believe them, like super believe them. He could have told Luke, don't tell anybody that you're working for me, and by the way, take this rat there and it'll help Ariel get... And I think a lot of it's going to be, yes, partly the curse, but I think a lot of it's going to be the man god saying, okay, follow my every word, don't tell anybody that I told you this, don't mention my name, and I will help you get Ariel on the throne. Do exactly what I tell you, and Ariel will get on the throne. And that's enough. I think that would be enough. Even without the curse, I think that would be enough to kind of persuade Luke into essentially manipulating people around him. Not because he's doing it in a mean way that he's evil, but that he's doing it because he wants Ariel to be on the throne. He wants to do the thing that he wishes to do. His future self was admittedly a bit paranoid, so his word might not be reliable. Still, if Man God did want to take down Sylphie or Ariel, Luke would be an effective puppet. Sylphie did rely on him, regardless of what she said about him. And I think this is kind of is one of those things of like, yeah, I completely remember the whole thing of like, Luke destroyed her self-confidence so much about her body. She like hates him so much. They like to bicker, like fun bicker though. That meant Luke was the highest probability of being chosen as one of the man god's apostles. Going to war with the man god meant they needed to locate his followers and suss out their motives. Rudius closed in slowly until he could hear his voice. I never knew someone as amazing as you had come to the city. You're wonderful, adorable. Your eyes are so beautiful, and you're full of determination, and your hair is soft as silk. You're like an angel. No, like a goddess of beauty. Come to grace this world with your presence. It took but a single glance for my heart to be stolen. His words hurt Rudius' head. So many cliches, but such sappy lines may be normal in this world. Oh, pardon my manners. I haven't even introduced myself yet. I'm Luke Notos Greyrat, and the second son of my household. The Notos Greyrats presides over one of the 4 major regions of Asura Kingdom. If he was one of the man god's flunkies, it made sense that he'd laid on thick while flirting with a girl, especially if it was the man god's command. It would be weird for him not to, since he had no shortage of women flocking to him. According to Sylphie, Luke's seen girls as little more than disposable sex toys. I like that paranoid aspect here. Like he's saying that like my future self was paranoid, and right here he's literally being paranoid. Like everything that Luke is doing right here, oh, it's probably because the man god said so. He's probably doing it because the man god said so. Yeah, right here, honestly, my mind immediately didn't go to Edis. The Edis was the obvious answer for this whole situation. What I thought was actually going to happen was this was going to be a joke where Rudius thinks that he's flirting with a girl, and then it turns out to be Leo. Because it starts off talking about the hair being soft and all that kind of stuff and angelic and all that kind of thing. But when he started, like asking for the name and everything, that's where I was going, okay, it can't be Leo. Otherwise, it's a really stupid conversation. Like we're trying way too hard to make you think it's a girl. Still, who was he talking to? They were hidden from view. Only angel that Rudius could think of was Sylphie. But he wouldn't dare talk to her like that. The word goddess brought to mind Roxy, since she was a goddess to him. But it couldn't be her either. Maybe Aisha. No, she was more like a little devil than an angel. If I might be so bold, would you honor me with your name? Of course, I would understand if you didn't want to tell me your last name, but I beseech you, oh beautiful one, to at least share your first name as consolation, that I might engrave it into my heart. Knowing who Luke was talking to would at least let him know who the man god was aiming for. Of course, that assumes Luke was one of the man god's apostles. He could have just fallen for one of Rudius' family members at first sight, but that would mean that Rudius is a little better than a peeping Tom. Ah, I see you refuse to share your name with me. At the very least, I beg that you would give me the honor of kissing your hand. That alone would be enough to console me. Luke bent forward, stretched his hand towards the other person. His head then jerked back momentarily, and his body froze. What happened? Had the man god attacked him? Or is he being controlled? Luke then collapsed, completely unconscious. Wait, Reese had witnessed this before. It made his own head pound. Stepping out of the gate was Edis. She slammed her foot into Luke's unconscious head. Not just knock him unconscious, starts stabbing your foot in his face. What is your problem? Appearing out of nowhere and babbling like a lunatic. She wrinkled her nose, kicking him again, then shoving him from the walkway. She then marched back into the house as if nothing happened. She's like, okay. Reese slipped from the shadows and walked to Luke. He questioned the man's morals for ever dare hitting on someone else's wives. But, in truth, he didn't report this to Ariel and Luke that he was married to Edis. In fact, this was Luke's first time meeting Edis. And of course he immediately, because I think even Orst had mentioned the idea that was love at first sight. Still, making a pass on her like that, maybe the original timeline of the two of them getting together had some influence on him. That is technically an interesting question in the idea that, yes, technically this was a destiny. Like, Luke and Edis getting together was a destiny. Now, Rudius coming into the picture broke that because he had a stronger destiny. And so essentially, this is the timeline that Orst is going by, and here's Rudius coming into the picture, and suddenly everything kind of verges onto Rudius, and it breaks it. And yes, technically that still could be in play for him. There's still the desire that he has for who Edis is. It doesn't change that. Nothing changed in that regard. He still falls in love with her. Or perhaps this was proof that he was really in league with the man god. It was difficult to say either way. Deciding not to leave him outside, Rudius dragged him into the house. He could interrogate him once he regained consciousness. I'm home. Edis lit up when she seen him, but quickly knitted her brows and crossed her arms at the sight of Luke. You know this guy? Yeah, well, I guess you could say that he's Sylphie's colleague, to be more precise. Well, sorry, I punched him. Yeah, see that? Well, he's unconscious, so I assume that was you, yes. It's fine. I bet it's his own fault for saying something inappropriate. It was. Well, then he only has himself to blame. He got what he deserved for laying his hand on Edis. But he would still lay him somewhere where he can rest. Hey, Rudius. Yes? Do you also want to kiss my hand? I'd rather kiss your lips, not your hand. She then punched him in the liver. But she didn't put much power behind it. That's off limits until nighttime. She huffed, face red, and stomped towards the living room. So tonight then, he thought. Reese then wondered what he should do. He really wanted to consult Sylphie and convey his wish to aid Ariel. They could join up and persuade Perugius to join her side. Still, he had no idea what motivated Luke to travel to his house. If he was working for the man god, Rudius wouldn't let it fly. While Luke was unconscious, Rudius checked the rest of the house. He'd be heartbroken if anything happened to anybody while he was preoccupied with Luke. It was unlikely since Edis was there. He passed Leo and checked on the several rooms. Roxy's room was littered with clothes, and Dilla was gone, so that probably meant that she left for work. Sylphie and Aisha were cooking, but Rudius didn't want to interrupt them. Zenith was tucked in her bed, asleep, with Lilia reading a book at her side. Nothing was amiss. Edis was playing with Lucy in the living room. Lucy had grabbed her hand to climb up atop the sofa, while Edis nervously supported her and looked on. It was heartwarming, but he could only savor it for a few moments. Returning to the empty room where Luke was, he had already regained consciousness. I had a dream about a red-haired angel. She was so beautiful and sweet, but she was also so strong. My ideal woman. But when I tried to kiss her hand, I woke up. His eyes were vacant, and he mumbled to himself. He probably had some brain damage from the punch. No, wait. He was already seeing the angel crap before he was punched. Please calm down, Master Luke. There's no red-haired angel. Oh, it's you, Rudius. Wait, what are you doing here? Huh? Where am I? Am I in your house? Just a moment ago, I was at the front gate, and this angel... What's going on? His memories were all muddled. At least it didn't seem like he visited the man god while he was unconscious. Luke glanced past him to Edis. She shoved the door open and was staring in. After a glance at Luke, she huffed and marched back to the living room. Apparently, she had been at least a little worried about him. Reese's fragile maiden's heart was pounding with worry. She wasn't developing feelings for him, right? Yeah, she came in there because she got all doki doki for Luke. It does technically bring up a massive question mark here in a minute. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but it would be very interesting. Oh, wait, your name, please. Give me your name. If you could also give me your address and tell me your favorite flower, I'd be forever grateful. Oh, and I'd be delighted if you could tell me what kind of man you're like. Please, calm yourself. This is her address. She lives here. Rudius, she lives here? That must mean that you're related to her, right? Tell me, who is she? Her name is Edis Greyrat. The two of us just got married. What? You're married? That means... She's your woman? Yes, that's what it means. Technically, Rudius thought, given their relationship dynamic, it was more like Rudius was her man. I like how Rudius corrects that in his mind. She's not technically my woman, I'm technically her man. Like, the possession's different there. Oh, I'm sorry. Why would you apologize? The early bird gets the worm, as they say. I suppose that's true. Knowing Ors's timeline, Ruiz couldn't help but feel guilty. They were supposed to be a pair. It was like receiving a package to find out that it was labeled to your neighbor. That didn't change their past together, though. Being her tutor, traveling the demon continent, sharing their first sexual experience together. That is technically true. Granted, Rudius kind of said that earlier in the previous chapter when he was talking about Orsted's future that he's seen. And at that time, it was Rudius feeling bad because he was hearing that somebody else got Edis. And he was angry about that. Like, oh, crap, she was meant for me, but she was with Luke. That makes me feel bad. Now here's the reverse, because now he's seeing that Luke is heartbroken because it was love at first sight. He fell in love with her. And granted, that's probably something that a lot of people face. Now, most people are going to see it more in the idea of, hey, stop getting flirty with my wife. Hey, don't look at my wife like that. But it is an aspect that Rudius is honestly acknowledging there's a misunderstanding here. He didn't know about our relationship. And yeah, technically, if I wasn't around, that was apparently supposed to be his wife. And so, yeah, technically you can be a little heartbroken for the guy for that. You can have a little bit of sympathy there and seeing that you just pretty much ripped that from his hands. But still, Luke's side. It's not rare for a good woman to fall for a single man, or for good men to fall for a single woman. Men often keep a number of women for themselves, but the opposite is practically unheard of. That was merely the way God made us humans. After all, a man can give up his seed to multiple women, but a woman can only bear one man's child at a time. It does seem there's even women who can have multiple men's babies at once, but the same cannot be said for our race. Luke was coming at this from a very male-biased perspective. Not that Rudius could be the one to talk, but to defend himself, Rudius did believe the opposite could work. You know, technically the reverse harem. Yeah, that right there was technically like, is that what Luke is implying? The idea of like, yeah, it's rare, but technically Edis could have us both, right, Rudius? Hey, Rudius, you okay with her having two husbands? I don't think Rudius would go with it. It's funny because Rudius is literally saying that right here. Like, I kind of accept the idea that there's a single woman that can have multiple men. But if Luke said that, like, hey, do you mind if Edis? No. I'm all for it. I accept that it's a thing. No, not for me, though. Other people. Good women tend to gather around the man who holds the most power. You have power, money, status, and prestige. I can understand why that angel, Miss Edis, chose to be with you. So he paused and shook his head. No, that's not it. I didn't come all this way here to have this conversation with you. Luke let out another large sigh. I came here because I have something to ask of you. Oh? Rudius took a seat. It was far too convenient. It was reasonable to think that he was the man god's lackey, trying to change the course of the history. While difficult to shake that suspicion, he had to hear him out. Rudius could assume that Luke would aim him towards his destruction, or impede Ariel's ascension to the throne. Would you lend Princess Ariel your aid? Rudius couldn't believe it. Asking for his aid? Shouldn't it be the opposite? No, Rudius said that he'd assist them if they needed. He wasn't approaching him out of the blue. Of course, I would be more than happy to. But why are you asking me this when I've already said I'd help? Your skills with magic and ability to befriend people with difficult personalities is astounding. On top of that, you demonstrated your fighting capabilities by returning home alive from a battle with the Dragon God. He even took you on as a subordinate. Truly, such feats are impressive beyond words. That made Rudius feel uneasy, going out of his way to compliment him like that. However, we feared involving you would disrupt Sylphie's happiness. That's why we never explicitly requested your assistance until now. We couldn't. Neither Princess Ariel nor I wish to involve Sylphie in this power struggle any more than we already have. At least they wouldn't. Luke had said as much when they dueled, but Luke dropped his gaze. His look in this pose made him like a tortured hero. No wonder women fell for him. In the past 6 years, we have exerted our influence with the Magic Nations to enlist a number of nobles and craftspeople to our side. Among them are some nobles who were born in Asura, and even some with great deal of political sway. But it hasn't been enough to ensure us a decisive victory. After all, these people are still outsiders in the kingdom's eyes. However, Lord Perugius could turn the tides for us. He has enormous sway in the kingdom, in addition to his force of charisma and impressive martial power. If we had him at our side, it would greatly further Princess Ariel's path towards the throne. It doesn't guarantee victory, of course, but at the same time, I don't think we can succeed without his aid. Princess Ariel needs someone of impressive repute to back her. Luke was being entirely serious, or at least Rudius didn't detect any deception. He sincerely believed Perugius was necessary for Ariel's goal. Orsted had the same high opinion of Perugius. But despite that, Her Highness has nearly given up on trying to persuade him to join us. Well, given how it's been going, I can't really blame her. Last time Rudius seen them together, Perugius had as much interest in her as Dirt. Basically none. Of course, meeting him was pure chance to begin with. Princess Ariel says it will make do without him. I agree with her. If we spent a couple more years strengthening our weaknesses, we'll probably be able to claim victory over her opponents. That was intriguing to hear. Orsa said that'd be a little bit more than 20 days until news hit of the king. If Luke was in contact with the man god, he wouldn't speak as if there was years to go, unless the man god told you to. Realistically, though, it would be difficult. Without Lord Perugius' aid, we would suffer great losses, even if we did win, and other issues would crop up after she secured the crown. So Ariel was attempting to trigger internal conflict in the kingdom. She needed to take the lead in the power struggle, outwit her opponents, and beat them at their own game. This would leave her the last one standing. She was aiming for ultimate position of power in the most powerful country in the world. That throne could not be claimed on words alone. They would need to fight for it. However, the fighting would continue even after the goal was achieved. If there was real resistance to her rule, meaning people claiming that she wasn't worthy, Ariel would lose everything after expending all of her capital to become king. Perugius would act as a deterrent to such opposition, as he was one of the 3 heroes who killed the demon god and still held sway. Not every noble would bend their knees in his presence, but it would shut them up knowing that he supported her. That meant Luke was desperate for his backing. That is a lot of assumptions and technically makes a lot of sense, though. Yes, the idea is that if she just goes in there and brute forces in there, there's still going to be the problem that even if she gets the crown, say she walks to the front door, runs up and grabs the crown as the last king is falling over, puts it on her head, and she's surrounded by her allies, and they're standing there going, this is a thing. That's still not going to mean that everybody suddenly goes, ah, crap, she beat us. All right, everybody, head home. She's got it. No, there's nothing of structure there that's going to say that she's going to be able to hold that control. You would literally have to have, which is what she was pretty much trying to do. She was trying to gain the favor of the knights and stuff, having their support, basically forcing a coup in that way before she left. And so that would allow her to do it because then she would have the control of power, basically. Those with swords in their hands, she would have those allies. Technically, and I never really kind of put this into mind back then, is technically it's a lot more complicated than that. Like, even if she had the entire military under her control, doesn't mean that she would have ultimate power. Because, I mean, it would just take somebody, shoot, like Elaine. The tides of war in the conflict zone after the displacement incident was completely changed by one person, Ghislaine, because she was extremely powerful. Just one extremely powerful person could technically turn the entire tides of a power struggle. She needs to gain ultimate favor over everybody. And yes, having somebody as powerful as a hero backing her would keep a lot of those people from even trying to take it from her. Because yes, they'd be fearful that the hero would be angry at them. There's a lot of things that can come into play, and basically the scales can so easily be tipped. But yeah, their goal here really is to gain favor through like absolute dominance in political sway, not just go in there and push their way in. Because yes, you would expend all of your resources to get to that point, and then you're just sitting there like a waiting duck for somebody to overthrow you. How long does it take until somebody forces a coup on her, takes over the throne, kills her, takes her out? And in order to make absolutely certain we can achieve victory, I would like your assistance. You do realize I don't know anything about politics, right? It's perfectly possible I'll be of no help whatsoever. You're far greater a person than you seem to realize. You'll be plenty helpful simply by being yourself. Rias scratched his head. I'm not that great. Great or not, you're a reliable fighter, and you have connections. You're acquainted with Lord Perugius, the Dragon God, a Demon King, the grandson of the Mills Pope, the entire Dolia tribe, and Silent Seven Star. Your contacts alone are impressive, and we're not even asking you to use those contacts. It's the fact that you're so well connected that proves you possess something special. I wish only that you might share a bit of that with Princess Ariel. That technically makes sense. Like, I agree with Luke's mindset there. Is that yes, technically Rudius is connected with a lot of people. I mean, we point that out on a regular basis. I mean, even back when Rudius first captured, Lineum Persena, they turn around like, holy crap, how the hell do you know all these people? You know Ghislaine? What? Like, he just knows all these people. He knows the chief of the Dolia tribe and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, kind of technically right here, maybe kind of want to scan through there and figure out what all he thinks that Rudius knows. And yes, technically everything here is through some sort of either Sylphie probably told them or through just kind of people gossiping about them. They all knew that he knew Lineum Persena. I don't know technically that you can qualify the entire Dolia tribe unless, again, Rudius told Sylphie and then Sylphie told them. Silent Seven Star makes perfect sense. Yes, they would know that he knows him. Lord Perugius, they went there together. The Dragon God, yes, he just went there and fought and came back. The Dragon King, yes, Bodigadi. Cliff being the grandson of the Mills Pope. So yes, everything here is technically true. This is kind of one of those funny parts where it's like, yeah, I can technically see later on if Luke ends up being a apostle of the man god, that maybe there's at some point he says something, trips up at some point and says something that he shouldn't know, that probably the man god told him. But obviously the benefit I could see them wanting here is that Rudius could talk Perugius into joining them. But it does technically make sense that Rudius' biggest asset is that for some reason he makes connections with everybody. That Ariel said that to begin with. Rudius is a very famous person. He's done a lot of incredible things. Having him under her, technically, or at least at her side, was a benefit to her because she can tell people, I know Rudius Greyrat. He's at my side. Connections are sometimes more powerful than even the ability to fight. Maybe Rudius suspected Luke, because he hadn't spoken much with him. Still, he wondered if he was the man god's puppet or not. Orsted had already said to assist Ariel, so he would help either way. However, the fact that he beat him to the punch made Rudius question if he was doing it of his own volition. Rudius decided to try some trick questions to see what he would say. Who ordered you to come see me? Order me? If you mean Her Highness, she made no such request, which means someone else advised you to come to me. Luke shook his head. I decided to come here on my own. And does the name Man God ring any bells? Man God? I remember hearing that name when we went to visit Lord Perugius. Who exactly is that? If he was in league with the man god, he wouldn't show his hand that easily. The man god never told Rudius to keep their association hush-hush, but that didn't mean that he wouldn't forbid someone else. Yeah, I can see this. This is this whole thing. Like, yes, technically, with Rudius, the man god probably never told Rudius, don't mention me, because he knew from the get-go, Rudius isn't, and again, if he has a curse that makes people agree with him, or at least do what he says, it could be an idea. My gosh, I never really thought about that. That if that is true, the idea that he has a curse that makes people, it makes him able to essentially persuade people or make them trust him. Again, opposite to what Orsted has, where they don't trust him, which makes me believe that there's a possibility that Orsted, the dragon god, is an opposite split personality from, my gosh, I'm going down the rabbit hole I don't need to go through right now. Like, man god and Orsted are split beings. That's why this one everybody hates and this one everybody loves. But there's a possibility that way back there, maybe the dragon god, the original dragon god, was swayed by the man god by that curse. But no, I could see that when Rudius first met the man god immediately knows or realized, or maybe knew based on the rules of the world, that this guy is not going to be persuaded by my curse if he has one. And thus he had to slowly work on him. Knowing that he had a strong destiny, he had to slowly work on him. But yeah, for anybody else that could be persuaded by the man god, or at least controlled by his curse to ultimately trust him, he could tell everybody, don't mention me, because yes, that would make... I can't see him ever, if he's at odds with Orsted especially, he'd never want these people to say to Orsted, I know the man god and I'm working for him. I would think like a prerequisite to anything would be immediately, hi, what's going on? I'm the man god. Hey, what's going on? I'm the man god. Don't tell anybody who I am. Never mention my name. Because if you ever mention my name, it immediately ruins everything that I'm having you do. He doesn't want anybody to know that somebody is a puppet of his. So yes, it makes sense that he would tell Luke, don't mention my name. Don't tell anybody you're working for me. If you want Ariel on that throne, do not tell anybody you're doing anything for me. Never mention my name. One, partially because there are people in the world that mentioning the man god's name will enrage them. That's a reason enough. But two, it would lead people into knowing the man god's doing something. Orsted. And additionally, what's to say that the man god, under any other person, not Rudius, any other person that's under the laws of this world and his curse, what's to say he doesn't have the ability to essentially hypnosis? Like, do a hypnosis on them. Similar to what Orsted was doing with the hypnosis to put Zenobia to sleep. Maybe he has the ability to put hypnosis on people to where they don't even remember their conversations. They just know somewhere in their head, I gotta do this. They go to the man god says, do this thing. They leave the man god, and they immediately go, I have a sudden desire to do this. Not that they know who told them to do it, they know they need to do it. Anyways, going a million directions. Luke looked baffled, but then scratched the back of his head. I guess it does sound as if I'm contradicting myself. We do wish for Sylphie's happiness, and it is possible we might rob her of that chance by involving her in the conflict with this kingdom. If they label us insurgents, even the magic nations won't be able to shield us. And there's where I personally get a bit suspicious. I never like when you bring up something that odd, and then the person immediately changes the subject. Rudius says, And does the main man god ring any bells? Man god? I remember hearing that name when you were talking to Perugius. Who is that? I guess it does sound a little contradictory, but let's talk about Sylphie. That's suspicious to me, but we don't really have a full idea of how long it is between those two comments. Because Rudy's starting to thinking to himself, and then Luke kind of, oh, I'm baffled, but then I'm going to talk about Sylphie. It seems a bit, but again, that could be that aspect of, typically with hypnosis, you can embed different thought processes based on a conversation. So bringing up the man god, start bringing up Sylphie. That scared Rudius as well. There was no telling what would happen if they made enemies of Asura. In the journal, Sylphie died as a result, and Millis killed Zenoba. Sure, Rudius could fight decently enough. He could even wipe out an army at once. With his armor, he could be fearsome in close combat. And Orsted said that he couldn't hold back against him. Yeah, this whole thing with him fighting Orsted has definitely boosted his own ego. But he still technically acknowledges that he does have limits. He couldn't be naive to expect he'd win every battle head on. Not even an idiot would fight a pro wrestler barehanded. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Okay, he just mentioned the idea of taking out an army. Yeah, I fought Orsted, but he technically, in the end, lost. And even though he was spared, Rudius, for a couple days even so after that, was a sitting duck. He could have died at any moment. If he fought an army at once, used all of his mana, collapse of mana exhaustion, somebody comes over, pokes, dead. That's it. He's not immortal, and more so, his family's not. Not even an idiot would fight a pro wrestler barehanded. To defeat someone like that, you might stab them in the back, poison, or pressure them with money. Without power to defeat anyone, you had to use other means. It doesn't always have to be straightforward up front. His future self fortified his defenses with strong relationship with Asura. Enough that they didn't come after him, at least. Better yet, they valued him enough to refuse the Holy Kingdom's order to hand him over. This was weird. I even went back and double checked. No, technically what future Rudius did was that he was providing research and knowledge and all the stuff that they were doing. Essentially the dolls they were making, they were providing that to the Magic Nations. The Magic Nations seen them as assets. Despite the fact that Millis Church wanted them badly, they were telling Asura to tell them to give up Rudius and Zenoba. Now, granted, Asura has massive ties inside of them to the Magic Nations. That's why they have kind of a relationship between the two of them. But it was Asura that was asking them to give them up in favor of Millis Church. Now, it could be simply Asura going, hey guys, Magic Nations, they really badly want Zenoba and Rudius. And we have a lot of people in here that are Millis Church, followers and stuff. Could you give him up? No, we're not going to give him up. He's too valuable. Okay. like they're telling Millis, like, we're trying, but they're not giving up Rudius. We'll try again later on. We'll send another message. But yes, it still holds the idea that there's so much. This is kind of one of those things that didn't really dawn on me until, I don't know if it was this segment or another segment, but I always love whenever they bring up the idea of why these nations that seem like they're at odds sometimes, why don't they ever attack each other? If Asura Kingdom is so flourishing, like their lands are so flourishing, why doesn't anybody want to take it? Like even the Magic Nations, they're up there in the cold and stuff. Like there's no crops or anything up there. They're just up there researching, making magic and stuff, solving their problem with magics and implements and stuff like that. Why don't they ever take over Asura? They always point out the idea that it's the Worm Mountains. Like they're in the way. You can't just charge an army in there. That's like there's not much room to go with. There these pathways and stuff like that are treacherous and stuff like that. It does technically give a lot of credit to how the world used to be before it was split, before the continent and everything was split. There was probably paths all over the place to get to each nation, and it wasn't until like Asura was the last one left, and Millis was down here kind of hidden away and shielded by water and whatnot, that it was all split, and it kind of those two remained. And everything else kind of built around it. And the land is so treacherous that you can't just come over and steal it. Anyways, that got me really sidetracked there, but I think it was technically Magic Nations that Rudius technically made defenses with by relationships. Which, yes, again, is in connection to Asura, because Asura does have a lot of the Magic Nations influence in there, or at least the guild. How would it go this time? With Leo here, would countries hold back as to not strain their relationship with the Beast Tribe? How good of a protector would he prove to be? Orsted had assured him that it would be fine as long as he had a guardian beast. He even said Leo had a strong destiny, which would keep his family safe. This was an interesting comment, especially after I read later on Rudius later tells him about Leo, and that's when he gets into everything about Leo. So why is he talking about it here that he had a strong destiny? But could that little pup really guard them by himself? Luke then spoke up. However, since you have the dragon gods backing you, I think it won't taint all of Sylphie's joy if we were to get her involved now. This is a really weird comment. Rudius wasn't sure of that. There was still places Orsted's influence had no power. The people of this world might have heard of the 7 great powers, but they didn't seem to realize how powerful they were, or how far beyond human their abilities were. Like I said, this comment is weird. Going back earlier, they didn't want to wish to rob Sylphie of her happiness. They didn't want to get her involved with this conflict of the kingdom. Ariel said that to Rudius specifically. I don't remember really Luke saying anything about it. He just was he was like trying to find out if Rudius would take care of her, whatever. But from Ariel's perspective, she herself said, I was trying to figure out a way that I can get Sylphie out of the situation. I can stand on my own now. I've been working to stand on my own now. I don't need her anymore. I want her to be happy and with you. Take her, make her happy. I'm going this way. We're parting ways right now. And then literally scene change, and then Sylphie goes back to work, which I thought was funny. But she was trying to get Sylphie out of the picture. And so I think this whole building up point was to get to eventually that point where they'll just leave her and go get the kingdom. But they wanted her to be happy, not to be involved with this. Especially, and Rudius acknowledges this, especially being labeled as part of this group trying to take the crown. Because if they win, they're the winners, she's the king. If they lose, they are enemies of the country to those that she lost against. And thus, if Ariel loses, Sylphie loses, Rudius loses, everybody involved with Ariel loses. And they will be hunted down. However, since you have the dragon god backing you, I think it won't taint all of Sylphie's joy if we get her involved now. What? Having the dragon god's support doesn't mean my life wouldn't be at risk. Luke responds, sucking a breath in and staring at Reese's eyes. That's true, but that's precisely why we only need your support on the surface right now. I want to make Princess Ariel king, no matter what it takes. Luke glared at him, eyes gleaming. Meeting his gaze without flinching, Rudius was surprised how strong it was. His determination reminded him of Rogerd's, as if he'd throw away it all to accomplish his goal. That's the only thing that sort of makes that make sense. I don't want to taint Sylphie's happiness. We don't want to get her involved. Ariel doesn't want to get her involved. We want to go fight the kingdom ourselves because we love Sylphie so much. We want to protect her. We don't want her involved with this conflict. Because even if Ariel wins, they could still even at that point be targets. And Rudius even echoes that later. No matter what, they understand that if you love somebody, you don't get them involved with a conflict like this. But it seems like right here, it seems like Luke is accepting the idea of, but I'm willing to put that at risk, I guess? But yes, in response to Luke saying, no matter what it takes, Rudius asked, why is that? It was the last request of a deceased friend. Rudius knew it was Derek Rybat. Please, won't you lend Princess Ariel your strength? He wasn't promising anything in return, as he'd come here on his own accord, rather than at Ariel's behest. It was a favor, rather than an offering deal. And I think that's where it is literally laying it out there. My confusion of the earlier statement, which seems contradictory, is simply in the idea that Luke is here saying, I have no choice. I need you, or this will never happen. I made this promise to my friend back here, presumably Derek Rybat, that I will help Princess Ariel make it to the throne. We didn't want to get involved with you. We didn't want to get involved with Sylphie. We want you guys to be happy. But I think right here, unless he's being manipulated by the man god, right here, he's in a corner. Ariel's giving up on Perugius. We know that we need him. Even if we win, we're going to probably fail in the end. I have no choice now. I need you, Rudius, and I can't offer you anything. And I'm probably going to take joy from you. Any other situation, I think Rudius would probably say no. But because he's involved, because he respects Ariel, because Ariel did things for him, and because Orsted is technically wanting that, it's giving him some reason to actually go with it. If Luke isn't being controlled, I at least give him respect for that resolve, even though, again, it is technically pulling people into conflict. Because he could probably fully well know that if he gets Rudius involved, Sylphie's involved. Rudius stroked his chin. He was still himself, even when the man god was pulling the strings. The man god would give Rudius advice, but it was still him that was desperately racking his brain to interpret his words. Perhaps the same was for Luke. Maybe he was trying to find a way forward. If that was the case, he wanted to help him. There's two things here. Yeah, technically that is true. Whenever the man god gave him something, it was always like, go take the request for a cat. And okay, go get a cat. But it was never the stuff afterwards. Afterwards is everything that Rudius does, and then the man god goes, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did all that crap. Again, it was almost like playing it out as if he was just having joy watching Rudius suffer and stuff. So yeah, technically that can be true in the idea that when Luke is talking to the man god, if he's talking to the man god could be saying, go seek Rudius's advice. If you don't, you'll regret it. And he's like, wait. What do you mean ask for his advice? And it just fades away. And then he has to figure out what to do. So it could be playing out the same way. But that could also be the idea that he's just trying to tip Rudius in a direction. That's all that Man God was doing with Rudius, was just kind of tipping him in a direction. And then letting destiny kind of play out, and then hopefully it sways in his benefit. With Luke, it could be different. With Luke, he could basically just say, go kill this person. And Luke goes, yes, sir. Again, because of that trust. But yes, it is funny at the end here. It's almost like Rudius has like sympathy towards Luke. Like, God, I know how it feels, man. I know these stupid, vague things he gave you. I want to help you out, dude. There was one problem, though. Rudius' opponent was neither Ariel or the Austria Kingdom. It was the Man God. If there was any possibility that aligning himself with Ariel was the Man God's plan, he needed to consult Orsted first. Would you permit me to seek counsel of those around me before I give you an answer? Luke smiled, despite the fact that he looked like he wanted to cry. He apparently thought this was a way of turning him down. All right. Sorry to bother you. Not at all. I'll give you my official answer in a couple days. I promise. His shoulders slumped as Rudius walked him to the front door. Leo was standing at the top of the stairwell, growling down at Luke, as if letting him know he couldn't go to the second floor. Did that mean that Luke really was suspicious? Rudius didn't know if Leo could sniff out the Man God's puppet with his nose alone. I don't see why not. Maybe there is some sort of spiritual thing that he can see. It would make sense. Edis peeked out of the living room, and Luke immediately put his hand to his chest to bow. It's like he's going like, okay, all right. Oh, hi. Immediately turns happy again. Miss, I realize I was ignorant of your identity before, but I still apologize for my rude behavior. I do hope we will meet again someday. Edis reached to grab her own skirt for a curtsy, only to realize that she was wearing pants. She scowled, feeling awkward, before crossing her arms. I'll be sure to entertain you more properly next time. I appreciate you saying that. Well, if you'll excuse me. Interesting dynamic. We'll see. Someone yawned from upstairs. Edis, please don't shout like that. Everyone is still sleeping. Sylvie made her way down the stairs. She must have been taking a nap after cooking. Oh, welcome back, Rudy. Luke, you're here? How come? Did something happen to Her Highness? I had an errand to run and decided to swing by. Huh? Oh, well, take your time. I can get you some tea. No, I should be leaving. All right. Well, I'll be heading back in a few. So take care of the princess for me until then. Will do. Luke smiled forlornly as he left. Sylvie and Rudius walked him to the gate. Luke's receding figure reminded Rudius of a lonely salaryman, completely exhausted as he went home from work. He's just like defeated. He found like the love of his life, got punched in the face, knocked out, wakes up, asks Rudius to help him. Rudius is like, to Luke, Rudius is pretty much saying, yeah, sure, I'll call you. Don't call me, I'll call you. So he's just walking home like he just got done trying to land a big deal for his boss and he failed miserably. What's going on with him? Sylvie wondered. Reese didn't respond, but couldn't help to feel like something was set in motion. No matter how he decided to act, he couldn't do a half-assed job. With that in mind, it was time to report to Orsted. Another visit to Orsted. I always love these visits with Orsted, but man, it's like I almost need a break at this point. Chapter 4, Mind Made Up. Rudius contacted Orsted with his ring. An hour later, he got a letter telling him to meet at the cottage. When I read that, I'm like, what? So he's like, here, if you need to contact me, take this ring. Okay, so that's how this thing work. Let me pour mana into it. And this guy like runs up. Here, sir, I got a letter for you. It's like, what? Like, how does the letter arrive there? Who does Orsted give it to? Who brought the letter? Does he magically send the letter to Rudius? Maybe teleports it there? I think it's nice because Rudius kind of questions, why doesn't he come here himself? I think it is nice because I think he's just, one, he doesn't want to walk into the the kingdom, and the kingdom literally sends all their soldiers at him because everybody's screaming at the top of their lungs, running away fearfully. And then, like, this big, catastrophe is going on. Like, everybody thinks the world's ending. And yes, technically, he could be doing that just because he doesn't want to, cause problems with his family. Ruiz did as commanded and went to the agreed location. Upon arrival, Ruiz found Orsted crossed arms, looking as if he nodded off. He had obviously been waiting, and Ruiz felt a little bit guilty about that. Sorry I made you wait so long. No, I arrived only moments ago. They sounded like a couple who just started dating. Ruiz filled him in on the guardian beasts, which he had seen no issues with. In fact, he was shocked that such an important animal heeded his summon. Orsted guaranteed his family's security with a sacred beast guarding them. Leo was far more of a big shot than Ruiz had thought. Ruiz then suggested having Cliff look into Orsted's curse, to which he was willing to give it a shot. Under this arrangement, Cliff would come to the cottage every few days and develop an implement to combat the curse. Since they had no idea when they would see fruits of Cliff's labor, Ruiz told Orsted that he'd keep up the guise that he was holding his family hostage in the meantime. Keeping a poker face to this explanation, Orsted merely nodded. All right. When I read this, I read it like 5 times. I'm like, what? What? What are we doing here? Like, yes, it makes sense. The idea of, okay, cool idea. I mean, we have this curse that is on Elise, and Cliff has literally found a way to combat that. That's great. That is insane. Okay, now Orsted has this curse that makes people fear him, which is, yes, agreeably kind of a nuisance. Like, Orsted doesn't need people to fear him. If he wanted certain people to fear him, he can make them fear him. But it's inconvenient that everybody hates him and everybody fears him. So yes, to find a way to combat that would be very beneficial. Orsted could probably work on his own to figure out things and get into kingdoms and stuff like that to fix things if he could just walk into a door and not have to worry about everybody fearing him. So yeah, I can see Orsted wanting to get rid of that. So Ruiz is offering an option here. I have this guy. He's good at getting rid of these curses. Let's see if he can figure something out. Let's see if he can make an implement. Oh, by the way, Orsted, we don't know when we're gonna get any sort of benefit from this. We don't know when Cliff's gonna be able to make something. So, Orsted, let's keep up the guise that you're holding my family hostage in the meantime. What? Why? I'm like, why? I mean, is it Ruiz thinking that Cliff is going to not trust Orsted and thus not want to make a implement? I don't understand why are we having Cliff think that that's the case? Because isn't Cliff going to tell Elise, hey, Ruiz's family's hostage right now? Like, none of this makes any sense. Anyways, that's whatever. Ruiz making stupid decisions, I guess. After Ruiz admitted that he hasn't reached out to Ariel yet, Orsted reprimanded him. What have you been doing this whole damn time? Ruiz could have made excuses like that he was worried about Edis and Leo, or that he was looking for an opportunity to introduce Ghislaine to her in order to get closer to her, but he honestly took the amount's leeway for granted and been negligent. On the opposite end, Orsted has been working on stuff. Here's the answer to what I was talking about last time. Orsted had gone to meet Perugius. He requested Perugius to support Ariel's bid for the crown, but had been refused. What? Perugius stubbornly insisted he wouldn't change his stance until he was certain she was fit for it. Lord Perugius had some serious cojones. Despite being terrified of Orsted, Ruiz admired him for that. He basically stuck to his guns, despite the fact that, yes, he is fearful of Orsted. Now, again, this is one of those things where I'm kind of curious if Perugius is even... I mean, he should be fearful of Orsted. I would assume that Orsted's extremely powerful compared to Perugius. But no, this is one of those things where it's like, yes, technically, that speaks volumes. It's kind of funny because when they were meeting with Perugius, and they were talking about the crown and everything, Perugius hated Asra. He hated nobility. He hated these kingdoms. He hated their rulership. He didn't want to have anything to do with any of it. But yet, he wasn't supporting Ariel. Ariel's like, help me out. No, I don't want to. This is pointless. You're all dumb down there. You don't know what you're doing. And at the time, it seems like one of those things of like, Perugius doesn't want to get involved because he sees it so pointless and dumb. And I think what it kind of turns into is, yes, eventually in that conversation, it should have clicked then. Eventually in that conversation, it gets into that king that he did actually respect. So at some point, they were in a state where he could back that kingdom. He did see somebody in it that was ruling the kingdom in a way that was positive. So it does sort of show signs that Perugius at some point gave a snot about it. But at some point they got corrupted and they got lazy and they turned into something that he didn't want to be involved with anymore. And so when Ariel's asking for him to back her, he's like, no, you're just another one of those dumb people. I'm essentially, in my thought process, was him saying, I don't want to get involved with your dumb little games that you play down there. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Unless you can tell me what it makes a good king. It sort of indicates this idea that Perugius doesn't want to get involved with their dumb games and backstabbing, but he's perfectly willing to back somebody if they truly are a good king. If they're truly somebody worth his time, he would back them. So even when Orsted comes walking in the door and he's like, holy crap, Orsted's here? And like, yeah, he's coming. He just came in the teleport. Holy crap. All right, clean up. All right, am I looking good? Oh gosh. Hi, Orsted. What can I do for you? Back Ariel. No. Like it's like a... No, I don't want to. I can't. I'm sticking to my guns. I want her to prove to me. And it technically plays into what Rudius is talking about later on. I think Perugius is testing her. And I said that at the time. When they were having that little tea time in that garden, that was what I was saying. He is testing her. He's giving her an option. Until you tell me what makes a great king, I'm not going to back you. Here's your homework. And it's kind of funny because it sort of talks about this later on, and Rudius at least talks about this. Yeah, I've got to find out about this person. We need to look into this king that he seems to have at least some respect for. Putting that aside, Rudius told Orsted about Luke's visit. He mentioned that Luke's plea could be on the man god's behalf, and Rudius brought up about how worried he was about helping Ariel. With this in mind, he wanted to know if they were changing their plans. Undaunted, Orsted said, no. We will make Ariel king. He dismissed the possibility that the man god wanted this outcome. Ariel being on the throne was of paramount importance to him. When Rudius asked how they should deal with Luke, Orsted thought for several minutes before answering. Perhaps we should kill him. That was terrifying to hear, said so casually. You're going to kill him? Here's the sad part. When I read that line, you're going to kill him? My mind immediately went to Orsted just shooting right back at him. No, you're going to kill him. What the hell are you asking me for? Orsted was silent, but the look on his face was terrifying. But wait, that's how he always looked. He then dropped his gaze, glared at a spot on the table. Never mind, he was definitely making a scary face. There's no telling what one of the man god's apostles might do. Killing him would be the best way to eradicate any uncertainty. I guess so. Rudius had already stilled himself to do whatever was necessary, but he couldn't stop his stomach from nodding in anxiety. Luke was working so hard to help Ariel, and they were just going to kill him? Despite everything that Rudius had done and achieved, he'd never killed anyone. Sure, a bunch of bandits were caught up in his spell on Beggaret Continent, and probably some of them died, but he hadn't looked them in the eyes as he did it. And yeah, he even mentioned that back then, when that whole thing was going on. He was raising up all the pillars to block the horses. He's like, yeah, one of them probably slammed into that and dead. And especially if they didn't die, if they got some like bad injury, it's not like they get rushed to the hospital. They just die over time. Probably very painfully. But he didn't see them. He didn't look them in the eye. It's the, push the button and not sure if the button connects to the chakra or not. So Luke would be his first kill, his introduction to murder. The thought made his blood run cold. Still, part of him felt like he had no choice. If he was going to be an enemy to his family, he had to get rid of him. He couldn't let his emotions get in the way and have it bite him in the butt. But could he justify taking someone's life simply because he had no other choice? You've done it plenty of times. It's like one of those moments of like, you've done it plenty of times before. What's new? What's new, Rudius? He wasn't trying to preach morality, but it didn't sit right with him. He was clearly more opposed to the idea of killing than he realized. Technically, Rudius has chosen to kill before. This isn't actually... Again, he brings up the whole thing with Beggaret, but yeah, technically it was the same case with Etof's men. He made a conscious decision, I am going to end these people. They are in between me and getting home to my family. I can't stay here. I have to get home. And he, in his mind, selectively chose in them. It just so happens they survived, but he did, in his mind, actively say, you are dead. The trigger was pulled, basically. And it's always a conflict that he kind of has in his own head. It's not always about morality especially if it's in the brief, in the heat of the moment kind of thing. But he always thinks about the morality of it. It happened back when he was freeing the beast folks from the prisons with Rejerd. I think he even had it in his mind when they were actually fighting in the Doldia village, the Begaret continent, a Tufts Min. It constantly is something that's in his mind. We're not sure that he's one of the Man God's apostles yet, right? Rudius' voice was straining with empty hope.
No. Given the timing of Luke's actions, there can be no doubt that he is.
What do you mean by that?
Their attempts to negotiate with Perugius have not completely fallen through yet, and news about the king falling sick has yet to reach them. Yet Luke chose this particular moment to seek you out. It's clearly the Man God's doing.
Orsted spat the last words in disgust. In that case, why would he ask me to help Ariel? Shouldn't he be doing the opposite? If he doesn't want Ariel to be king, then he should try to keep me away from her.
He likely seeks to control someone from the Ostra Kingdom in order to lead us into a trap. Right now, the Man God cannot see you directly, which is why he's using Luke. It's his way of keeping an eye on you. Think of it as putting your ear to a wall to hear what's happening on the other side.
So Luke is monitoring me?
It's possible that's not all he's doing. There's a chance that he might try something at some point. It's a safer bet to get rid of him.
Again, I think there is sort of still a question mark here of, is it the Man God's wish to even stop Ariel? I think even when Rudius was talking to the Man God about the whole situation with Ostra Kingdom. So you led them there too? You wanted to get Sylphie killed over there? And he's like, oh, I haven't done that yet. Like, he wasn't even there yet. Like, again, if you believe the Man God's words, it sort of implied this idea that that wasn't even part of his plans yet. There's a good chance here that the Man God doesn't even care about the Ostra Kingdom. He doesn't care that Ariel is the king or not. So to even put that assumption there that this has anything to do with it is dumb. Again, Orsted here is saying specifically he could be setting up a trap in Ostra Kingdom for you. Not that it gives a crap about Ariel, that he's trying to use that conflict to get rid of you. That's all that matters. But yeah, I can very much so see that the Man God, if he is still seeing that Rudius is a threat, he's going to have somebody close at least monitor him because he can't see him. It was possible that Rudius could give away Orsted's aim through his actions and words. It was no wonder the Man God would have somebody keep an eye on him. It would be impossible to keep Luke out of the loop as he assisted Ariel with her goal. Let's assume for a moment that we did kill Luke. Are you sure that won't negatively impact Her Highness or anyone else?
What do you mean?
You mentioned some guy, Derek Redbat, I think his name, was originally supposed to become a prime minister, but he's no longer with us. With his absence, it's highly likely that Ariel is completely dependent on Luke for moral support. Rudius thought Ariel certainly did rely on Luke. Despite having other retainers like Sylphie, Luke played the biggest role amongst her immediate supporters. It wasn't affection or romance, but similar bond that Rudius had to Cliff and Zenoba. No matter what happened, Rudius was confident they wouldn't betray him. Ariel likely felt the same about Luke. This is a hard one to really kind of stomach here, or at least process in my mind, because it just, I guess there's not enough indicated in the novel series so far what exactly Luke does. By all accounts, all I've been indicated so far is that Luke is loyal. He pledged himself to Ariel. And yes, they had this fun little conversation about their favorite women back at the very beginning introduction. But other than that, we haven't really seen Luke really do anything. And that's the unfortunate not really having a direct focus on Luke and what he's doing on a regular basis. He could be going out and making massive ties for Ariel on a constant basis. He could be constantly in talks with certain nobles. So far, all of it's indicated from our perspective is that he just kind of stands at Ariel's side. That's it. And he's very devoted. So I don't know. It's the assumption there, I guess, is that he plays a very pivotal point to her as a moral support. And additionally, if anything happened to him, maybe, it would completely crush her. The Man God may have considered that we discover his connection with Luke. Perhaps his entire aim is to goad us into killing him. My mind immediately goes to, technically from the Man God's perspective, obviously seeing future Rudius, talking to Rudius, and divulging all of his plans and screwing up everything. Yeah, remember that one point where you talked about Luke. Rudius knows, at least through, if it is true that he is, and it's not just paranoia from future Rudius, Rudius knows that Luke is working for me. So let me make him, or if he's not working for me, let me make him extremely paranoid to the point that he thinks he's working for me. One or the other. Make Rudius super paranoid into thinking he is or was my apostle. Then Rudius will kill him. And then once he kills him, everybody could possibly turn on Rudius. Ariel's going to hate Rudius. They're not going to trust Orsted anymore. Everybody's going to turn on Rudius, and Rudius is going to be broken from it. Sylphie might even leave Rudius over it. That's great. I think of anything, and I mean, it's true. It is the case with the future Rudius. Man-God knows now the best way to destroy Rudius is to take his family away from him. If I can just get them separated. And he was technically doing that. He did it to future Rudius. I need to destroy Rudius by taking his family. There was no telling what would happen to Ariel if Luke died. Humans were weak, no matter how tough they seem on the outside. Under the right conditions, they'd fall apart. Something Rudius was familiar with, losing sight of himself when Paul died. But if all they wanted was a puppet, maybe it was better not to have Luke around. That's a mean thought. That's a mean thought. As Rudius thought, he studied Orsid's expression. The man finally nodded in agreement.
That is perfectly possible. The Ariel I knew valued Luke greatly. Without him, she may not succeed on the path towards kingship.
This is one of those interesting things where it seems like it's so common knowledge. Like, why wouldn't Orsid know this? And I think that's what we're sort of developing here as a dynamic between Rudius and Orsid. Now, Rudius had to learn all this stuff here recently. He's just learning about relationships and valuing things. So this is fresh stuff to Rudius, but he's understanding it now. But Rudius is almost giving humanity that he has now recently learned to Orsid. Orsid doesn't understand this stuff. He just says, no, Ariel, sit on chair. Good. Rudius is over here going, okay, there's more to it than that. She sort of needs moral support. She needs somebody to be, supporting her mentally. You can't just throw her on the throne. It happens. It's kind of interesting that Orsid is essentially gaining this from Rudius. That Rudius is essentially being his other half of humanity. Because I think it probably comes from Orsid being around for so long. He may have had an ounce of humanity to begin with, but the fact that he was reincarnated solely for the purpose of killing this one being, he probably, and also having this curse, he doesn't know how to interact with people. It was probably extremely awkward when he was interacting with Nanahoshi. So Rudius sort of has to give him what most people take for granted. Here's how people think. Here's how people feel. Here's how people support each other. I will be your encyclopedia to the knowledge of what it is to be human. So I think we should leave Luke to his own devices for the moment. Truthfully, Rudius just didn't want to kill him. Luke was one of Sylphie's best friends, as well as a cousin. Rudius wasn't close to him, but they had enough of a connection that he didn't want to see him dead. On top of that, Rudius didn't want to kill in the first place.
All right, we'll do as you advised then.
Thank you. The bullet was dodged, but they still may need to kill him in the end. Sylphie may resent him at the time, and it may lead to a divorce. That thought made his stomach knot up. Still, he had to still himself in case he had to cross that bridge. You mentioned before that the man-god can't control a bunch of people at once, right? About how many can he control at once, then?
I cannot give you a precise number, but it's most likely around 3 people.
That was less than Rudius had imagined. And what are the odds that he can control more than that?
Not impossible, but when he attempted to kill me, he only employed 3 to do so. None of the others came directly at me. We are probably safe to assume it's just 3.
Which were these 3 people?
The Sword God, the North God, and the Demon King.
Yeah, that all pretty much lines up with what I was thinking. Rudius thought, a Demon King and 2 of the 7 great powers? Even that wasn't enough to get rid of Orsid? No wonder the man-god gave up on that route. If the man-god sicked those kind of people at Rudius, he probably wouldn't stand a chance. Though, if he could, he probably would have done it already. Rudius suspected that he was slowly altering people's destinies over a long period of time, like he did with him. That technically makes sense. I mean, yes, for the sake of Rudius being a target, yeah, he would technically want to manipulate people over a long period of time to go after him. Again, assuming this whole curse of trust thing isn't a thing. But yeah, it does beg the question of, why haven't they sent somebody like that to Rudius before? Or technically he has, or again, because of his strong destiny, it never works out in the end. He technically did it with Orsid. Let's be truthful. He didn't send Orsid to kill Rudius. He sent Rudius into Orsid. I wonder why he can only take control of 3.
Because that's a limit of his foresight abilities.
You mean he can only look into 3 people's futures at the same time? And any more than that would be impossible?
Correct.
Then maybe he can control 4, but he wouldn't be able to look into their future. Now, if somebody had a cheat like that, they wouldn't gamble by giving up that power to look into their future. It was reasonable to assume that he can only control 3 and no more. Kind of makes me wonder, how does he know he can only look into the future of 3 people? Again, unless he has some insight into that and he's just not explaining it. So if Luke was one of those 3, that means he's got 2 others under his control.
There's no evidence that he's controlling 3 people right now.
You may be right, but I think there's a good chance that he's got at least 1 person under his thumb in the Asura Kingdom.
Why do you think that?
If the man-god truly doesn't want Ariel to take the throne, then it makes sense that he'd control somebody who'd oppose her and somebody working alongside her. Perfect for collecting and disseminating information, right?
The man-god doesn't need to go that far to... No. I suppose there is some value in reporting your movements to the opposition.
Orsid managed to talk himself into agreeing with him. Yeah, that technically makes sense. I can totally see something. I can totally make no doubt it's gonna be Darius. No doubt it'll be Darius. That little stinker is definitely working for the man god. That'll make it even more easier to have to get rid of him. But now that you thought about it, the man god could see into people's hearts. That's one of those weird translations. I think they've explained it that way before, and I think that was kind of that idea of seeing an inner self. Like again, Rudius is over here in his house, and he seems like he's asleep, but then he's actually over here as his old self, sitting in front of the man god in the barren world. It's this idea of like taking your inner self, your inner mind, your heart into there to talk to it. Perhaps he didn't need to gather information. With Rudius' presence, Ariel's future prospects were obscured from his views. Maybe having someone to keep an eye on Rudius and Orsted was enough for him. It's perfectly possible that he's involved in something else entirely. Like maybe he's waiting to attack my family when I leave the house.
With the sacred beast serving as your family's guardian, the man god cannot readily go after them. That creature has enough power that you needn't worry about that.
More than our Momfy?
Perugius' spirits don't even begin to compare.
Damn. Rudy's gonna go in there with his sacred beast and be like, get him, boy, and it just takes them all out. It was hard to believe him when Leo hasn't proven himself yet, but this was a dragon god speaking.
I digress. You're likely right about the man god having a puppet in the kingdom.
Then the key to victory will be sniffing out this person, I assume.
Indeed. I know nothing about his third apostle, assuming he even has one. It could be that this person is operating separately and is unrelated to the Osran throne. Keep your guard up.
That made me think about Triss. I don't know. There's a side of me that kind of thought about Triss. And the idea that if he had Triss in there working on that stuff, which would make sense in eventually, if he had Triss working in the Osran Kingdom, eventually the Osran Kingdom is falling, and then Triss leaves there, and eventually future Rudius ends up running into Triss. Triss keeps him essentially away from that. I don't know, it didn't really indicate that Triss was telling him, no, go over here, but she could have been a part of keeping future Rudius away from the Osran Kingdom. Just a random thought. I suspect everyone. Suspect everyone. To win against the man god, they would have to defeat his 3 puppets. This would probably take multiple times, but their current goal was getting Ariel on the throne. Is there anyone you know with absolute certainty is not on his side? He knew he was asking the impossible. But if the man god was controlling Zenobia or Cliff, and Orsted tasked him with killing them, he didn't know what he'd do. He'd be devastated.
Your family is safe from his influence. In addition to the bracelet that you wear, they are also under the Guardian Beast's protection.
And what about Cliff and Zenobia?
They could be possible targets. Be careful around them.
Rudius didn't want to hear that. Yeah, don't say go kill Cliff or don't kill Zenobia. I don't want to kill Cliff or Zenobia. Is there anything we could do to make sure that they don't fall into his grasp?
No. If you find it necessary, you can warn them against heeding the words of someone who calls themselves the man god, though I doubt it would do you any good.
Yeah, technically, again, if the assumption is that he can control people in some way or make them trust him, that all goes out the window, depending on how that trust works. If it's simply an idea of it makes them believable, then it would make them confused. If it's almost like an actual magical charm, then it could make them override what Rudius has told them. That put Rudius in a pickle. The man god didn't attach himself to anyone and everyone. All they could do was pray to a different god. The Zenobia and Cliff wouldn't be targets. For the moment, I should work on getting Perugius' support to help Ariel on her path to the kingship, right? That plan hasn't changed?
Correct. Though you should remain wary of the man god's apostle. If he starts proposing something, inform me immediately.
Very well. In any case, it seems like Ariel has worked herself into quite a corner. From what I can tell, she has nothing in which she can sway Perugius' opinion. The last time I was with the two of them, I believe he asked her what the necessary element for being king is, and she wasn't able to answer it adequately.
Ah, yes. How very like Perugius to ask such a question.
Do you happen to know the answer?
I have no idea. However, the only person Perugius ever supported on the throne was Gaunus Frian Asra. If you research him, you should be able to find a clue to lead you to the right direction.
Again, I said that back there. Look what made him great. And here's going to be the problem. Because he's going to say, go research him. We're just going to go research him. The problem is, Ariel didn't know his true self. Ariel said, oh yeah, he's this great person, blah, blah, blah. And Perugius is like, that's not him. That's what the history book said he is. So researching him is going to be difficult. Are they going to be able to find true statements about him? The ones that Perugius knows about, that the history books doesn't. Ariel has plenty of information about him, but it's whatever they pass down. The revisionist history thing.
If you research him, you are sure to be able to find a clue that leads you to the right direction.
All right. then I shall be off to see it done. This would be Rudius' trump card into getting contact with Ariel. Before leaving, Orsted gave him a robe that was conveniently gray, darker than the one that he was wearing.
That robe was worn by the great sage Titiana a millennium ago. It's made from a death adder rat skin, woven with magically imbued thread. It has high magical resistance and is stab proof. It likely became a magic item after being left in the labyrinth for an extended period, where it developed the ability to reduce the wearer's weight by half, meaning one can move like the wind if needed. Since you cannot use a battle aura, it should prove useful.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, remember like way back there that when they talked about the labyrinths and the idea that magic items from labyrinths is because an item from like a fallen warrior or whatever would fall into the ground, and the mana that's flowing from the outside and the bodies to the core would flow through the items and imbue it with magic. That's how these magic items are being made. And it's always like random what they actually end up having. So it's kind of implying this idea that somebody, or Titiana, whatever, somebody dropped the robe in there and this mana flowed through it and it caused it to become magical. And that's interesting because he says likely it became a magic item. Makes you kind of wonder if there's another way of making magical items that we just don't know about yet. Maybe Rudius will figure out some way of just being able to pour mana through something until it becomes magical. This is an incredible item. So, what kind of price could something like this fetch?
I took it from the Dragon Folks repository. In the past few days since we last met, it would net you a decent amount if you sold it, but I'm giving it to you so you can protect yourself. Wear it.
Read him like a book. Rudius was curious what this Dragon Folk repository was. It probably had a bunch of items like this stored in it. Boots that can open up a treasure chest if you kicked it open, or a trumpet that can uncover hidden doors. The robe could increase his combat proficiency. While it was a step down from his magic armor, he could bridge the gap with his knowledge and courage. Wait, he had neither of those. I was like, I seen the knowledge part, and I'm like, well, okay, maybe he's going to talk about possibly trying to duplicate the process or maybe apply it to something else. Take the robe and add circles to it or something like that. No, he's just talking about, like, I can undo the things that I don't gain from this. Wait, I don't have that. That night, Rudius summoned Sylphie to his room. If he was going to work with Ariel, he needed to speak to her first. She must have sensed that it was a serious matter as she showed up in her normal clothes. Well, Rudy, what is it you want to talk about? Sylphie asked, her expression guarded. It made sense that she was on guard, since the last few times that he called for her, it was difficult subjects. Sylphie, I'm going to be direct. All right. He's not. It's like one of those moments of like, here we go. Rudius is going to be honest to Sylphie. He's going to lay it all out. Never mind. Like, within the first, like, couple lines, nope, he's not going to be truthful. He's not going to be truthful. He's going to still hold things away. I've been ordered to help Princess Ariel on her path to become king. She scowled suspiciously, then lit up, then went back to furrowing her brow. Ordered? That's right. Which means you're not doing it on your own free will. Ors is the one calling the shots. Her demeanor changed completely. He struggled about talking about Orsid's involvement, but he had guilt for things he had done to her in the past. He wanted to speak truthfully this time and trust her. Then tell her the whole thing. This is one of her close friends that were involving. Yeah, it's like one of those things of like, okay, then why don't you include the aspect of like, because Orsted said that she is destined to become king, and according to my future diary, she didn't become king because I don't think he even told her about the future diary at all. I know that he talked about this guy that could see the future, whatever, but he never really kind of fully divulged the future diary, his future self, or anything of that to Sylphie. He could tell her that, and that could be something that could definitely keep Sylphie's mind in check. Okay, Ariel dies in the future. Hey, you're going to die too. Luke's going to die too. Or's just wanting to help undo that. Do you want to help? That changes things quickly. Now, granted, it's not like Sylphie's going to immediately believe everything Rudius tells. I would hope that she could trust Rudius. She might not trust what Rudius is getting the information from, but she'd trust Rudius, I would hope. Sylphie gaped for a moment before snapping her jaw shut and narrowing her eyes. And what is his motive for making Princess Ariel king? Does he stand to benefit from it somehow? It will give him connections in the Osra Kingdom through me. It doesn't seem like he wants something right now, but he may ask for assistance in the future. That is technically true too. But he's the dragon god, the same one that beat you senseless even when you used the magic armor. I realize the Osra Kingdom is regarded as the most powerful country in the world, but I still can't see why someone like him would want to foster such relations with them. There's some matters that can only be resolved by political influence, and not force alone. It's only natural that Orsted would want that at his disposal, so he can make use of it when he needs it. It was technically the groundwork that they were laying for another 100 years in the future. Orsted had an overall picture of a future that was supposed to play out. Reese had no idea how or if he would make use of Ariel. True, technically, it could be somebody down her bloodline. Truth be told, all Reese knew is that from his future self, Ariel becoming king would be inconvenient to Mangod. Again, based on his suspicion and not necessarily confirmed, and probably not confirmed for a reason. Thus, they would get her on the throne, partly to get under the man god's skin, but also it was a basic tenet of war to not let your opponent have his way. This particular plan to get her on the throne was more for Orsted. It didn't really necessarily mean anything to Rudius. The minuses outweighed the pluses, truth be told. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier. Helping Ariel meant he was supporting her, which would pull him into a messy aristocratic politics. Rudius only desired to help Ariel herself. She had been there for him a lot, and it was time to repay her for that. Thinking simply, Sylphie would be overjoyed that her close friend achieved her goal. Stopping the man god from having his way would satisfy Orsted. Rudius would benefit with a deepening of Sylphie's love and convincing Orsted of his usefulness. In the end, that was the best way to see it. It's like, don't think about all this broad stuff about politics and making this noble mad and possibly that house having connections to the magic shitty of Shariah and them coming after Rudius and these people hating each other, and that might come back on his family. Maybe Norn might have some issues with getting into this other school. Just think, I bonk head, Sylphie happy, Ariel happy, Orsted, trust me. Just think of it simply. And what's sad is that in any other story, it would be that simple, but not for Refugian. So it's almost like Refugian's calling himself out. Yeah, I'm going to make this much more complicated, by the way. Well, Orsted's future demands aside, at this point, I think Ariel only stands to benefit. Well, yes, I guess you're right. There are many unsavory characters in Nostra Kingdom, and if we think of it as pitting villains against villains, it's not a bad move. She was pulling no punches against Orsted. He didn't look like a bad guy, but was he more menacing and untrustworthy than he thought? Did he seem like the type to kill people upon first meeting them? Okay, yes, that part was true. Princess Ariel should be the one to decide if we accept the aid or not. She narrowed her eyes. Personally, I want to guarantee that he won't betray us. A guarantee? Yes. Why do you seem so sure that he won't stab us in the back? You don't have a choice. That would be my response to her. Don't look at me. You don't have a choice. I don't do it. Somebody else does it. In the end, Orsted does it. He wants this. So we don't have a choice. I'm not going to be able to stop him, and he's chosen to do this. Your guarantee is that he wants to do this. You want him to write it on a note and put his seal on it? Guarantee? Yes. Why do you seem so sure that he won't stab us in the back? Rudius wasn't. In fact, Orsted seemed like he was hiding something from him, though he was more trustworthy than the man god at least. Rudius would immediately go to Orsted's summons. Yeah, it's like the difference there. Whenever he gets summoned by the man god, he's always like, oh god, here we go again. Whenever it's Orsted, he's like, yes sir. It's such a weird dynamic. Yes sir. Yes boss. Yes boss. What can I do for you, boss? Yeah, okay, boss. What do you want me to do for you, boss? Kill that Luke? Okay, boss. Like a Yakuza lackey. It's not like I think that he won't, but I do think he's sincere in his dealings with me. As long as I don't work against him and continue to make myself useful, I don't think he'll be our enemy. If you say so. She didn't seem fully convinced. All right, I'll drop the matter of whether Orsted can be trusted or not, at least for now. Are you sure? Continuing our debate won't do any good, will it? And it seems like you really trust him. Yeah, true. She straightened up. We just have an endless verbal tug of war if we kept at it. More importantly, I think we should discuss what your plans are. How do you, or rather, how does Orsted intend on making her king? She was unusually serious. Right now, she wasn't his wife, but Ariel's bodyguard. It was a side that he rarely caught a glimpse of. Her expression, coupled with her naturally boyish nature, made her look like a distinguished nobleman. This is kind of an interesting part right here. It's like that whole aspect of like he's talking to her, and yes, technically she's his wife, and they're going through this whole situation, and she's responding to it as she would to somebody that she wants to take care of, which is Ariel. Obviously, the curse is sort of affecting her. It is interesting to note the idea that at some point she goes, okay, I'll drop that. Okay, I'll stop this back and forth on whether or not we should trust him. Because it's interesting, because everything so far has indicated, and it was a lot in the whole thing with the summoning of the Sacred Beast, there's indication, this idea that they innately inside themselves, they can't help but not trust him. Like the curse is affecting them. Rudy's kept pointing out, it's like the curse is affecting them, they can't trust him. It's sort of indicating here, if that is true, she's overcoming it. She's like, okay, I'm going to drop that. And it could be a thing of like, because I can't argue it, and I'm going to keep arguing it, it's never going to end, so let's just drop that and move on to this topic. Since this is never going to change in my mind, technically, because of the curse they're implying, let's go over here. It's sort of interesting. But yeah, she suddenly just turns into Fitz. I'm surprised Reese doesn't just think she's become Fitz. Her natural boyish nature has come out of nowhere, and now she's a nobleman. She has turned into a boy. For now, we intend to persuade Lord Perugius to back her. But if it's between the Dragon King and the Dragon God, wouldn't the latter, that is, Orsted, be higher ranking? Yet he wants to convince Perugius to help us? Lord Perugius has a greater political influence in Ostra Kingdom, and his word holds more weight with the people there. In contrast, Orsted has absolutely no authority in Ostra. Reus was pretty much telling what Orsted told him, but yes, it technically makes sense in the idea that Orsted isn't the one that saved Ostra Kingdom. Again, the Ostra Kingdom was the last nation that was alive as they were well, besides Melis again, and the demon army was boring down on them. And Perugius was the one that saved them. And there's always this symbol that reminds people of his existence. Whereas, was the indication for the Dragon God, the 7 great powers? Nobody cares about that anymore. Again, like Bruce mentioned, nobody knows exactly how powerful they are unless you have first-hand experience. But Lord Perugius doesn't seem like he'd been that easy. No matter what Princess Ariel says, he won't even give her the time of day. Luke and I tried to convince him on her behalf, but to no avail. Yeah, things do look pretty rough. But Zenobia seems to have gotten on his good side. It seems like he's also taken a liking to you, Rudy. I wonder what the difference is. If I had to guess, I would say it's because the two of us aren't trying to become kings. Ding, 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 ding. Press the button. Ding, 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 ding. You've got it right. That's exactly what I was saying. Does trying to take the crown offend him somehow? No, it's just he doesn't like kings, I think. That was simplistic, but not far off from Perugius' view on kings. I wonder if he had any intention on aiding her to begin with. No, if that were the case, he would have refused her outright. He seemed to be testing her. Really? At any rate, I'd really appreciate it if you allow me to talk to Princess Ariel directly in the next few days. Do you mind? Sure. I'll set things up for you. I'll let Luke know as well. The two of us will be present for your conversation. That's all right, isn't it? That's fine with me, although I would like to keep it a secret of Orsted's involvement. And frame it that I'm helping because Luke convinced me to. Can you do that? Why would you hide the truth about Orsted? Since you're a subordinate now, it might give Princess Ariel peace of mind knowing that you're doing it under his orders. I can see both ways. Like, and one half is like, yeah, technically, but with the whole curse thing and how that's going well with you so far, yeah, I guess it would sort of bolster up a little bit knowing that a dragon god is behind him. But no, I would see it being kind of like a little sad, the idea that Rudius is only helping because he's getting ordered by the dragon god, and she'd want him to help her on his own. But yeah, having power behind him is technically important, meaning she'd be relieved to hear that he had the support of the dragon god. However, Rudius didn't want the man god's apostle, Luke, to have any more information than necessary, even if they haven't confirmed he was a puppet yet. The man god's eyes and ears could be anywhere. I like to keep Orsted's activities or orders discreet. Orsted is fighting this man god person, right? Is he really evil? Evil or not, he tried to kill Roxy, tried to go after you, and he tried to kill me off by pitting me against Orsted. He's our enemy. What? This is a weird question. I think he pretty much explained quite a bit of this to Sylphie, so maybe there's some vagueness there that she's not getting. Evil or not, he tried to kill Roxy, tried to go after you, and tried to kill me by pitting me off against Orsted. He's our enemy. What? She jerked her head around, surveying her surroundings. Is he still after me? Is he still after me? Where's he at? Is he in the corner? Expect him to be in the room? I couldn't say, but I doubt he's given up. In that case, I'll keep my guard up, especially at night. The only person in town would try to go after me in the night is you, Rudy. She got him there. Maybe he'd do something tonight. Still, they know how to plan to meet Ariel. So, Rudy, if you're going to help Her Highness, that means you'll be going to Ostra Kingdom as well, right? Yes, I'm sure it will. I couldn't very well convince Perugius to help her out and send her off, and then rinse my hands of the matter. Rudy thought he also had to defeat whatever apostle the man god had at the kingdom. Then there was this Tristina person that he had to hunt down. I want you to take me along as well. What? I know you probably want me to stay behind and look after Lucy. I also know that Princess Ariel and Luke want me to continue living here in Shariah. But honestly, I want to help out. I've been with them for a long time now. Sylphie took his hands, curling her soft fingers around his. Please, Rudy, I want you to take me with you. Bad idea, Rudius. Bad idea. It is so funny how, like, the whole thing with future Rudius is kind of put a damper on that. And it's so funny that he catches himself at some point. He's like, all right, wait. No, I don't want to do that. Squeezing her hand, he wanted her to stay. But that was probably his own selfishness thinking. He wanted her safe, and where she could look after Lucy. He wasn't one of those guys that thought that women should stay silently and stand behind their man, but he just didn't want her in danger. It's one of those conflicting things of, like, you know, is you like, I want to protect them. Oh, so you don't think they can protect themselves? No, I just don't want them in danger. Like there's nothing about that. I just don't want them in danger. Oh, so you think they're weak? Okay. Still, Sylphie had spent years with Ariel and Luke. They were companions since the displacement incident. They were like Reserve was to him. If the Reserve was in a tight spot, he'd rush to aid him. True. Sure, he waited against protecting his own family, But Rejered was one of those top priorities. That meant Sylphie probably felt the same. Family was still important to Sylphie, and he knew that she wanted to help raise Lucy, but if they were in need, she wanted to do everything that she could to help him. That was only natural. That is kind of the interesting struggle there. The idea of like Perugius is saying, yeah, Rejered's the same. I was displaced. Rejered saved me. I would do anything for him. She was displaced. Ariel and Luke were there for her. So if anything happened to Rejered, I would want to help him. So if anything happened to them, Sylphie would want to help them. But I would weigh my family. She would weigh her family. But she's decided this. And technically, Perugius has decided that route too. So we'll see whenever Rejered shows up. Will he go to help Rejered? Again, it goes in the idea that as long as they're safe, then why not? All right, lend me your assistance then, Sylphie. Okay. Sylphie's face lit up. Her mouth widened into a grin. Just then, Perugius recalled what the man god said, that Sylphie was destined to die in Ashra Kingdom. Perugius hated considering that possibility. But could he have ended up shortening her lifespan? Was he overthinking it? History had been altered. Things might not go the same way as the diary said. That is true. I mean, enough has changed versus what you had. Again, for one big thing, Roxy's not dead. So that could technically be enough to cause a butterfly effect there. But yeah, technically he is. That was what I thought of immediately when she said, let me take you with you. I was like, no, that's not a good idea. You died last time. But the idea here is that that's because Ariel died and they got overthrown. The idea here is that he's wanting to go there with everything planned out and everything safe and everything prepared. Not just Ariel frantically running over there quickly because they got word that the king is dying. Obviously, Ariel was massively ill-equipped last time. Or that time. Sylphie, yes? The man god won't be directly involved, but he will use people to get in our way. You mean how he used you to fight Orsted? Exactly. Then we should be wary of anyone who might be under his control? Right. But it could be someone close to you. Someone close to me? Like who? Like Luke. Her face hardened. Rudy, that's out of the question. If Orsted is working to make Princess Ariel king, then the man god won't try to undermine that, right? Which means he'll try to stop her. So there's no way that he'd go after Luke. Luke would never turn against Princess Ariel. The man god might find a way to sweet talk him into it. He has a way of corrupting people. Sylphie glared at him, and he sensed a murderous hostility in her gaze. It was probably the first time he'd seen her look at him that way. It's a really weird segment right here. So basically, Luke could be, that was impossible because the assumption is that the man god wants Ariel to be on to not be on the throne, and so working with Luke doesn't make sense. But the idea is that's assuming this has anything to do with Ariel being on the throne. Again, we're making too much assumption that Ariel being on the throne is important somehow. Yes, Orsted has laid out that that's how the future is supposed to be, so his plan's way in the future is important, which yes, the man god could be trying to alter that by breaking those in power in that path. But again, that's assuming that has anything to do with it. So Luke helping Princess Ariel be on the throne or not could not matter. But her hostility towards him is kind of interesting. If Luke loses sight of myself and tries to hurt Her Highness, is that another ding Seven Seas moment? If Luke loses sight of myself and tries to hurt her, so stupid. If Luke loses sight of himself and tries to hurt Her Highness, then I'll kill him. She said that with so much resolve that it sent a chill through him. It was the first time that he had ever thought of her as terrifying. Neither Luke or I would ever betray Her Highness. I'm sure he'd rather die than be deceived by someone and stab her in the back. I would too. Yeah, the problem is, though, again, and Reese has not explained this to her, is that there's a possibility the man god has the ability to cause somebody to do something. Cause them to have absolute trust. Now, again, what I said back there with the whole future diary is I think it was a case of him telling Luke, go here and you will succeed. If you don't, you're going to regret it. She will never have the throne. And so Luke's like, okay, we got it. Man God said it's going to work, and it didn't work. He trusted the man God that would happen, it would work. It's not a case of him backstabbing her. It's a case of him thinking that if this knife goes in her back, she'll be magical. Wait, you're not magical, you died. It's that case. Reese felt the same with Rejered. If he ever did anything to hurt Rejered, Edis might turn on him. I see. Sorry for bringing that up out of the blue. No, there's no need for you to apologize. I appreciate you warning me. That's the important thing. Just be truthful to her. As she smiled quietly, Perugius was able to still himself. If the time ever came that Luke had to die, he couldn't let Sylphie do it. He needed to be the one to do the deed. And that's a sad thing. Obviously acknowledging that it would hurt Sylphie a lot if she had to pull that trigger. And so he has to do it for her. Now, I think right now they're sort of putting it in a way that it feels like that's probably not going to be the case, but it'll probably just turn into an aspect of them just trying to sidestep Luke. Like, I think what's going to happen in the end is I don't think they're going to end up killing Luke. I think what's going to happen is Luke is going to do what Man God told him, thinking full well it's going to help Ariel. And in the end, when they get to that finish line and the battle is going crazy, blood is shedding, and Luke is like, no, this is going to work, and Rudius kind of just pushes him off the side and say, it's not going to work. Here's our resolve. And then Luke at that point is going to realize, crap, I was wrong. She almost stepped on that one step that was going to collapse and she'd die. He was lying to me. He's going to have the same realization point that future Rudius did. At some point, Luke's going to realize he was lying to me this whole time. I almost got her killed. And I think that's probably going to shatter him. That's the sad thing, is it's probably going to shatter Luke, like bad. But that's chapter 4. Unfortunately, I don't know. Maybe I'm off my game right now. It didn't feel like as much stuff to talk about in this particular 2 sets of chapters than I thought. But it still ended up being a decently long recording, so I guess that's what we're gonna call it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this set of chapters as usual. Really great setup. Again, all my suspicion around Luke seems to be pouring into Rudius at this point. Even though I was mad at the previous Mushoku Monday that they weren't addressing the elephant in the room, suddenly Rudius is just he's climbing on the elephant in the room and he's dancing around on top of it. He does not want to let this go. I like having this little brief moment of rare Rudius being truthful to Sylphie moment, even though he's caused Sylphie to scare him. He's like, Sylphie's being scary. What's wrong with, I broke Sylphie. She's suddenly turning into a boyish nobleman and glaring at me. But again, it kind of shows that resolve of how much Sylphie loves Ariel, which is weird because this is a kind of a troublesome spot here in the idea that she's getting angry at the idea that Luke's just like me. We would never do anything against Ariel, but if he ever did, I'll end him. And I think it's that idea of almost like if he betrayed me that way and betrayed Ariel as well, who he should never betray, and I trust that he'd never betray her, yeah, that technically would tick somebody off. You're betraying 2 different people and you're betraying yourself. I'll stop him. I'll end him. That's a bit much. Stop him. I'll end him. I'll kill him. But it is kind of a little scary moment there, and an interesting realization for Rudius, and again, kind of plays into why he's never truthful to her. He's always afraid of how she'll act and how she'll respond to things. And the one time he's finally truthful, she scares him. It's kind of funny. He's never going to be truthful to her ever again. But we'll see. But like I said, a lot of setup for what's to come. I'm super excited to see where it goes from here. If we're getting right into starting to talk with Ariel, I think is what our next step is here, and get her set up for going to Astra. I'm already kind of wondering, I'm not sure how many chapters are in this, but I'm already kind of wondering just how far I'm probably not even halfway through it. I'm kind of curious if we're going to actually get to Astra Kingdom in this volume. That would be kind of interesting to see how that kind of resolves and see if Ariel does eventually get on the throne. But crazy stuff. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys for dropping by. I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Mondays. Thanks to everybody that dropped by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. As per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports, through kind words. Your guys' verbal support is really greatly appreciated. And additionally, of course, as always, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily. Again, like I said earlier, lots of great super chats that came through. Love the support from everybody. And yes, again, Gearless. Gearless is dropping weekly bombs. Noah's dropping weekly bombs. Nicholas is dropping bombs. King David, Joshua. It's amazing. I really appreciate you guys' support. Got a bunch of new Patreon supporters, which as well. Matthew, Joel, Silver Strike, IG, Rico. I don't know how many of those people are doing it for Mushoku Monday. A lot of people specifically say it's for Mushoku Monday. But either way, I greatly appreciate it, guys. It means so much to me. And until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. I can't very well convince Perugius to help out. I can't very well convince Perugius to help out. And he tried to kill me. The two of you seem to be but I do think he's sincere in his. But he was guilty about how he was done, or a trumpet that could uncover.
But I'm not giving it to you so you can. I took it from the Dragon Folk's repository.
All right, then I'll be off to see it then.
You're likely right about the man god having a puppet in the kingdom.
But they may still
But they may still. But are you sure you want? Are you sure it won't have any negative? Are you sure that it won't negatively impact His Highness? Are you? So Luke is monitoring me. But it is nice that Rudius sort of has this thing. But yeah, it is. It's funny. I came here because I haven't asked you